Today, I'm going to be reviewing the top cut deck lists for each of the Pro Hero Nationals that happened this month. That means that I have 56 deck lists to review today, and I'm going to try and do all of this in under 1 hour. That means I'm going to be spending less than 1 minute on average per deck list. And the way I'm going to accomplish this and still be done in an organized fashion is I'm going to go by symbol and then by character, meaning I'm not going to jump around from character and symbol to each other. I'm going to do all 11 Earth overhauls back to back, and that way we can very, very quickly see what is unique about the list and maybe what is excluded from the list compared to the others. I'm going to go by symbol from least top cuts to most top cuts. So let's just jump in right away with the all and order symbols. And we have none in the EU region, none in the OCE region, and none in the US region. These two symbols had 0 top cuts, and in all of Season 2, they only made 1 top cut, and that was Shigaraki 3 at the Rochester RLE. So 2 symbols, only 1 top cut for the entire second half of the year. I made a video about it a few weeks ago. I guess it's probably been a solid month back now, but about why those 2 symbols have completely fell off the face of the earth in terms of competitive play, and you can see my theories on why that happened there. Next, let's jump into the water symbol. We only had 1 deck on the water symbol make top cuts, and that was Carson Panos on Shoto Todoroki 1, and he took this deck all the way to a 2nd place finish at US Nationals, which was the largest Universus event ever to take place, 411 players. And in honor of the largest nationals ever, Carson played the largest deck ever. We have about 112 cards. Now, Carson made top cuts with Todoroki at Gen Con, and he was running about 105 cards. So he's even taken the deck size up. Now, it's not with set 5 cards necessarily. The only set 5 card that I see in the list is the single copy of Manifest, but everything else is pretty much set 4 and before, and even then it's mostly set 1 through 3 when you look at the attack lineup. Now, it's only running 30 attacks out of 112 cards. That puts it at a very respectful attack ratio. This is not a deck that is looking to win straight away. If you watched all of the Carson was on stream quite a bit during top cuts, and if you watch his matches, he's a very patient player. He is willing to take his time, and he really leans into the defense of the water symbol. And that's just something about water, is that you can have a deck list that's 100 plus cards and still have really solid consistency here. I also like that he added Toru to the main board. It's just a nice 6 check, 0 mid block. And then I noticed that against Nomu in the first round of top cuts, he actually sideboarded into Toru 1 and took down that game. So it's basically just an extra sideboard card. I figure that also is just a nice 0 mid block. But a very, very defensive water deck that takes its time. We have a few copies of Go Beyond and Special Edition Collectible here to find the exact attacks that we want when we're ready to go in. Deadlock on Observant Student to be able to go grab a ranged attack. And then that's going to do it for the water symbol. On the fire symbol, we also only had 1 player make top cuts, and that was Byron on Fire Tokoyami. Now, we saw Fire Rappa do pretty well during this RLE season, but Rappa did not make a single top cuts during Nationals. Instead, it's just Fire Tokoyami, and this list is very, very similar to Jacob Johnson's Fire Tokoyami list, who made top cuts at Gen Con and I think was the Swiss champ. In fact, I played Byron in top 8, and he told me that a large chunk of this list was taken from Jacob Johnson's list. Except I don't think Jacob Johnson was running this 1 copy of Go for the Win. This is a very, very aggressive list. We're basically running through 4 attacks: Ice Storm, Twisting Azure Inferno, Dark Shadow Ruin, and Frigid. Frigid draws. This makes our actions not count. Twisting Azure, giving everything speed and not counting towards progressive. And then Ice Storm is, a 7-hander with low health. A Breaker 2 is basically all this character needs is to survive 1 or 2 extra turns, and a Breaker 2 is going to do that. And then we can see we're also coming in with the barrier shields in the sideboard, capture evildoers and concentrate for like Mirio matchups and such. As far as set 5 cards, we see Season Brawler for the extra draw and Lust for Battle because we're milling our deck so much as Tokoyami. And that is going to do it for the fire symbol. The next symbol we have is the air symbol. We had 2 players make top cuts on the air symbol, and they were both under Jiro. We had, let's see, Air Giro. Justin Birch, he also made top 4 at Gen Con with Air Giro, and here he's running it back at Nationals, and it's a very, very similar type list. Justin is, once again, not running any copies of Electric Jolt. Instead, he's opting for more of these powerful attacks like Home Run Comet, Indiscriminate Shock, and Pillar Swing. I'm not sure if Amplified Sound Blast was in his Gen Con list, but flash attacks are just really strong right now. We just don't have a lot of quality ones to choose from. Got some earphone jacks, seizing the advantage, and a single copy of the Big Three and a single copy of Levitate coming in as set 5 cards that we're including in the foundation base. By and large, the foundation base for Air Giro really hasn't changed much over the course of these last several sets. You know, we see a Web of Blades, Nice Try, Levitate, Big Sk, but you know, the core is still there, and it's the same with the attack package. The core is pretty much older cards. You know, there's not a lot of Undaunted Raid cards making its way in. But this is still a very, very unique list, a unique take on Air Giro. We're not doing instant explosive release. We're not doing jolts. We're not doing zero grav lifts. We're just making everything, like, we're just throwing haymakers here, and we're counting on our double jab pummels to make our progressive okay. And then the other Air Giro that made top cuts was in the EU region. We had, let's see if I can find, Philip. And Philip got second place at last year's World Championship. And here he is. He's qualified to go to Worlds again. So this is back-to-back for Philip. And both times, I believe, was on Air Giro. Last year at the HLC, we saw him run this instant explosive release, very greedy Giro line. Here he's switched it up quite a bit. We are running 4 copies of this set 5 attack, Spiral Wave Surge. Lose 1 health, this attack is 2 damage, so it's a 4 mid 6. And then when you're playing, by the time you're playing it, it's probably going to be like a 4 mid 9 because it's getting damaged since it's a charge. And then if it's blocked, your next check to play a card gets +1 for each attack your rival has blocked this turn, and they're going to want to block an 8 to 10 damage attack. And then it just further helps your checks, and you're combining that with double jab pummel. This is a deck that's just going to ignore progressive to a pretty good extent. And then we've got the Home Run Comet for our haymaker. We are playing the 4X Jolt and the 4X Specialized Soundwave. And the foundation base is very similar to Justin's foundation base, but we're not running any assets or actions. And before I move on, when it comes to Giro, does anybody know the last time a Air deck made top cuts at an RLE or higher level event that was not Giro? Because I honestly can't remember a single time that's happened this year. I think the Air symbol is basically Giro, and once Giro rotates out, I'm kind of worried for what's going to happen to Air going forward, if it's going to immediately drop, you know, to the bottom of the symbol tier list. If anybody knows that answer, seriously, put it in the comments, because I don't. And I am curious. But 2 Air Giros, that's going to take us to our next symbol. Let's see, I've got some sticky notes down here. Okay, that's going to take us to the Death symbol, where we also had 2 characters make top cuts. We had Declan Savage on Death Shigaraki 1, and this was a list very focused on destroying our rival's stage. And then we're just looking to guarantee that 5 health burn on Shigaraki's face, right? And then we're going to hurt their stage, and we're just going to drag the game out as long as we need to slowly kill them 5 damage, or 9 damage at a time. So Float Combo is there to guarantee the 5 burn damage from Shigaraki, but then we're playing all of these other attacks that are going to feel really bad to block, because if you block Full Cowling Impact, you're destroying a foundation. If you block Merciless Rush, you're destroying a foundation. If Declan then uses Evil Gaze, then he's going to be destroying 2 foundations if you block it, and he can also use this on defense to further destroy your stage. And then he's got cards like Decaying Grip, where you can only block with cards like 3 block modifier or better. I've been dunked on this attack quite a bit because my brother used to play Shigaraki 1 quite a bit, and he would play this, and I would always get caught only holding, blocks that are 1 or 2 block modifiers. And then, of course, you have to run Vile Seizing at a 4X pretty much to finish it out. We saw Nothing to See here be very, very strong on defense. There was a few times where Declan was on stream, and the discard 1 momentum, this attack gets -3 speed, is very, very strong when it comes in handy. And then it can also commit to further destroy our rival's stage. We have like Learning to Harden. When we destroy it, we're going to be drawing, and it's also solid speed hate and damage pump. Snack Time to hurt their board. We have Spear and Shield as like a breaker one, and we're going to commit Showdown so they can basically just, Amirio is never allowed to call high against this deck. Just a very, very strong board control deck, and eventually we're just going to get there 5 damage at a time. All we have to deal is 1 attack's worth of damage each turn, and then we can always typically live to see our next turn. And then in the US, we had Jose Narono on Death Eraserhead. Now, I've already done an entire video on this list. Jose won the webcam RLE in July, and I made a video about how Death Eraserhead took down the RLE. Then Kevin Broberg won the Vegas RLE with Death Eraserhead, and it was almost the same list. I think there was like 3 or 4 cards that were different. And this list really hasn't changed that much, so I'm not going to go into it a lot, but basically what you're looking to do is blow up your stage with Brute. We're going to flip to get damage. We're going to use Brute Strength to get damage. We're going to further blow up our stage with Fierce Whirlwind. We're then going to lead to this massive Grenadier Bracers damage pump when they can't block it. We're going to use Erase to get the response on Twisting Azure Inferno. We're going to string out like crazy. We have this to combat the momentum-based decks like Mirio, but it's also just solid for a string attack package because it's basically a 3-diff attack. And Fierce Whirlwind, re-readies everything. And then we can finish off with this. It says it's a 5 difficulty. This is really a 3 difficulty attack because Eraserhead will have always played in action. So we're going to finish off with this 3 difficulty Blinding Cloth Capture and take the game. And then because you're Eraserhead, you get pretty solid defense. You're not looking to survive for a long time with this deck. This is very, very dissimilar to the Void Eraserhead lists. This is an Eraserhead list that wants to win a lot faster, but just because you're Eraserhead, typically people can't kill you that fast. All right, that is going to do it for the death symbol. Let's look at which symbol comes next. I think we have the life symbol. Let's see. Yes, we have the life symbol with 4 different characters topping. Although that's not nearly as many as I thought. And we didn't get a single, like Momo, for example, was completely out of all of Top Cuts. Nejire still hasn't made a single Top Cuts. So a lot of life characters that I would have expected to do well that didn't show up. We did have 3 life overhauls and 1 life recovery girl. And the life overhauls that did make it into Top Cuts all did well. We had Luke get 2nd in the EU region. We had Travis get top 8. And of course we had George take down the US Nationals with life overhaul. Let's jump into these lists and compare and contrast. So Luke is running a 100% punch package list. So this is quite a bit different than like Andrew Holder's Gen Con winning list. We're running cards like Setup Strike instead of Tongue Whip. And it's a lot more aggressive focused on the foundations. One of the big upsides of Life Overhaul is how defensive he gets to be, but Luke is opting, instead of like cards like Rescue Completed, to run cards like Carbo Loading, which is going to give something 3 damage, and then when you gain health, which you do when you deal damage with Overhaul, you get to re-ready it, and then give something else another 3 damage. One thing I thought was interesting about Luke's list is that we are running 2x Preparing for Battle, commit, discard a card, draw 1 card. I'm wondering if that's to make the Rejuvenating Smash get a momentum, or if this is just to further draw into our deck, because Overhaul can sometimes struggle for drawing. Overhaul typically wants to build up his stage and just play from there. So that is it for Luke's deck. It's kind of a more aggressive Life Overhaul deck, although we did see him sideboard in Focused Attack for the Deadlock Enhance when he was in the finals against Void Eraserhead, because those games were going really, really long, and it came down to like who had better Deadlock than the other and who was drawing it. But let's jump to the US Nationals, where we have Travis Tangeman, and this one is a punch focus list, but here we are running Tongue Whip instead of Setup Strike, and then we have 1 copy of Cannon Blast as just an extremely, extremely fast finishing move. And it's a lot more defensive focus, right? We bringing in our Rescue Completed, our Heroic Assistance. Of course, every Life Overhaul is going to be running for Passing the Torch, but you can see 3 copies of All Protect You, 4 copies of Release. Back Alley Haymaker building and release will always be the most unfair interaction in this game, in my opinion. I cannot wait until release rotates. Maybe they'll ban it on Tuesday if we're all lucky. But, that might be a controversial take. But I hate that Back Alley Haymaker is getting to build in the best defensive foundation in the game, and it's on a 0 difficulty foundation. But that is going to do it for Travis's list. Then let's jump into George's list. Now this one, the really spicy thing that George is doing is running Maximum Overhaul, and he's not doing it at a 1 or 2x. He is running 4 copies of Maximum Overhaul, and we saw just how key this was in the finals against Water Todoroki, where he was able to go on these just incredible attack strings that were made possible by building for Maximum Overhaul and Maximum Overhaul picking up attacks in his stage. Not only that, but George is running 1 copy of Needle Stab. And this one, I faced George in the top 4, and he beat me in game 2 because of Needle Stab. He discarded 3 cards so that he could put 2 cards in his momentum and then use those momentum to make this massive repeated 100% smash that I could not block. So the 1x Needle Stab, really, really spicy take from George here. And then we're running 4 assets. We've got a Young Heroes, an Airy, and 2 Capes. Of course, this is just insane deadlock, and this is a very defensive list, and it just unflips our foundations. As far as the list itself, extremely defensive. Almost every single foundation is focused on defense, and then he can even come in with the sideboard with a lot of like Mirio hate. Bursting Muscle Bash, I assume, is for Recovery Girl, but most everything seems to me to be kind of focused on Mirio. Let's see, we also have some foundations like Bonds of Friendship. Flip, the Sphere attack gets -3 damage, but the main reason you're normally flipping this is just so you have access to a 1 high block. And then you have Tight Lip, which is a 1 mid block that you can flip. So great block modifiers, and even early in the game, George is typically going to have access to the block zone that he needs from his stage. At least that was my experience when we played each other. He would use Tight Lipped to flip the block zone that he needed and then block from his stage. Just an expert player, a really, really spicy take on Life Overhaul, and quite different from the Life Overhauls that we saw in the past. That is going to do it for Overhaul. Let's jump into the Life Recovery Girl list, which is Max Kennedy in the Oceania region. And this list is actually pretty compact. It's 76 cards, which you think is a huge list, but we've seen Recovery Girl lists easily get to 80, 90, 100 cards and still be pretty consistent, just because Recovery Girl is so comfortable playing a longer game and just constantly healing back up with cards like Body Rejuvenation. And Repeated is just a great card for Recovery Girl because it has Powerful 3 on it, and it's going to, you can destroy some foundations with Recovery Girl and give it Throw. We're also seeing Command Pigeon Flock and Back Alley Haymaker, two different attacks to build in foundations from our discard pile into our stage, on top of just being Recovery Girl, rejuvenating for that all-important draw. And then just a very, very defensive life list going on here. Of course, Command Pigeon Flock is building in Friend of Animals. And that is going to do it for life. Then we have 2 symbols that had 5 characters make top cuts, both Evil and Void. Let's start with Void, because I think that's the easiest. 4 of the Void list characters that made top cuts were all Eraserhead. We had in the EU region, Mike Hardiman and Liam Chauner. Now these lists are fundamentally the exact same. I think they're running 1 or 2 cards different, and they're running different sideboards. So, each player is still putting their own kind of flavor on the list, but they're pretty much the same list. And we see this happen like 4 times. Like my brother and I ran almost the same list. These ones did. There were 2 Mirios that ran the same list, 2 Tokoyamis that ran the same list. So this kind of like buddy list, people testing against each other and then deciding to run their friend's list and then, perfecting it together and then both making top cuts is something we see happen quite a bit, which I think is really, really cool. But I am just going to combine these lists for purposes of time. So let's just jump into Liam since he took down the entire event. This is a punch-focused list, but certainly not a punch-only list. We're still running Twin Sword Slicer for an Echo attack. That's also a combo that we could pick up with like the Deadlock on Night Watch, for example. We're running Expert Flurry, which is going to be, all-important momentum hate in this meta right now. We are running Grasping Tape Toss, which is just a nice throw to get momentum for, where we can cash out like Repeated, but it also just has insane Deadlock. This is a list that wants to play a longer game. It is not looking to win early, although it can if it draws the right hand. But by and large, it's looking to play a much, much longer game, so deadlock is going to be very important. So we're running Grasping Tape Toss and Plummeting Punch, maybe the two best attacks with deadlock in the game. We're getting Lessons from Tayaki, Night Watch, Can't Escape Me. We have lots of solid deadlock options. I think I'm forgetting one or two in here, but that's okay because we're going pretty fast. The Void list has a ton of cancels and disruption pieces that are very, very strong right now. Spooky, Learning the Standards, Dissolving, Decoy, Citywide Crisis, Can't Escape Me, Barrier Shield, Nullify, Erase. There is so much disruption in this list that it's really hard for people to kill Eraserhead early in the game, and then when you get late in the game, Eraserhead is just able to take a stranglehold on the game because he's such a defensive 7-hander and he's got all the deadlock. So very, very neat list here. I love seeing Nullify being run at a 2x. Let's jump into the Void lists in the US region. We have Nathan DeWalt in 17th place, and this is a punch-only list. There's not a single attack that's not a punch. Of course, Hardened Jab is awesome in Eraserhead because it's a 5-speed. Eraserhead covers up the one weakness of the card, that it's only 3 speed. But here we're playing cards like Rewind Throttle. Throttle, it doesn't seem like a great attack, but it's a great poke. It's going to be 7 speed for 3 damage. Most people aren't going to be willing to spend resources to block such a tiny attack, and then that's going to help fuel like repeated 100% smash later on. And you can see that we have repeated at a 4x, whereas Liam and Mike had it at only a 2x. We're also running cards like Uppercut, which get quite big. Throttle can also just be a good starter for lethal attack strings because you get to commit a card in your opponent's stage. And then you get Rejuvenating Smash, you get all the typical cancels of the Void symbol, and here we aren't running any Nullify, we're running a copy of Plus Ultra actually instead, and 1 copy of Barrier Shield in the main. So this is a more compact list. We're underneath 70 cards. We have almost perfectly even block zones, and it is punch only. And then we had Corey, I believe. Yeah, here we go. 12th place in US Nationals, Corey Aguilar. This is another more compact list. We're at 72, but it's a pretty, respectful attack ratio at 30%. It's punch only, except we have a couple copies of Grasping Tape Toss. That's just incredible deadlock. Add 2 rival foundations to the bottom of their deck. You love to see that. And you pretty much force a block from your rival because if it's not blocked, you get to commit anything. Yeah, and then you get access to the awesome Void cancels. I'm not seeing anything super different here. I guess we're running the 1 copy of Think Fast. Commit 1 foundation, change the zone of your attack. If it's been changed, you get +1/+1. That's an interesting include for Eraserhead. We got the 1 copy of Idle Work, Destroy to draw a card and discard a card. But other than that, it's your typical like Void, cancels, defense. Although we're not running like Dissolving the Conflict in this list. And we are running Barrier Shield at a 3x. So we saw one list run it at a 1x, one list run it at a 2x, and then this Eraserhead list is running it at a 3. I think it's all kind of just depends on your preferences. I'm not sure if there's an exact right answer there, but this is a card I always fear when I'm on offense. That is going to do it for the Void symbol. Wait, no, that was the 4 Eraserheads. We had Midnight, sorry. Dobby Guy, Brett Pendragon playing Void Midnight. Now this is going to look almost the exact same as the Eraserhead lists, except we're just putting Midnight on top instead of Eraserhead. And the reason for that is that Repeated and Rejuvenating are awesome Midnight cards. Repeated has 4 keywords. You can even give it another keyword with like Easily Excited, and then commit 1 foundation to make this a 9-speed attack. Discard the momentum that you need for the powerful 3, and you can see how this is just a massive finishing move. Other than that, we're running only 1 non-punch, and that's going to be Expert Flurry for momentum hate. And then, yeah, the foundation package looks about what you would expect from Eraserhead. It's just focusing on Void cancels, and we're getting awesome, the Void spam foundations with tape, which is a very, very strong spam foundation in the current meta to combat those Mirio players. And then 3 copies of Barrier Shield, and he's sighting into Eraserhead. I'm not sure the matchups that Brett would rather run Eraserhead over Midnight, but I would be interested to hear the answer. So Brett, if you're watching this video, drop me a comment and tell me the matchups where you were switching to Eraserhead. Maybe Mirio for example. That would make sense to me. That's going to take us to the evil symbol. We had 5 players top on evil with 3 different characters. Oh, sorry, we didn't have 5 on evil. We had 4 on evil. I just put Mineta 2, and then I thought that, I was adding that in as like 2 Minetas made top cuts. But let's just start there with Mineta 2, because this is pretty fascinating. Zach Richards gets top 16 with evil Mineta. Typically, we see Mineta 2 being run on water, at least the last few times we've seen this character make top cuts. But here, Zach is running him on the evil symbol instead, which evil had a huge glow up in set 5. If you want to watch that video on like the resurgence of evil and fire, I made that video about a month back. It's the same one where I talk about why all in order have gone away. But here, Mineta already has debuilding your rival stage on face. And then Zach is leaning even more into it here. We're once again running Merciless Rush and Evil Gaze and Turn to Dust to destroy our rival stage. Then we've got Chronostasis triggered, just an awesome Breaker 2 block where we can also on offense freeze and hurt our rival's character. And then of course we get the all-important Grape Rush, which is going to be a throw in Mineta. It's going to be a base 8 damage throw in Mineta. Just very, very powerful there. And then we get like cards like Creepy Realization, Brute Strength. Nervous Habit is very strong. If it's committed, then you can your rival destroys 1 foundation. You can also just lose health, which Mineta gets plenty to give everything speed. And yeah, this throw is going to help out getting momentum, so you can reduce attack speed to 0 and then draw a card. And we are running 3 copies of Barrier Shield. Once again, we see that Barrier Shield has just become a really, really strong card in the metagame. Running 1 copy of League of Villains and 1 copy of Airy. Of course, every evil deck is running Tongue Whip, and it's nice to see Ignited Arrow. And, there's been a few top cut deck lists where we see Ignited Arrow featured pretty prominently. I think we're going to see that in the Evil Overhaul as well. Let's just go ahead and switch over to William Anderson III, getting 6th place. Yeah, he's running 4 copies of Ignited Arrow. So this is a card that has been missing a little bit recently, and now 2 top cut deck lists of players that are going to the World Championship running this at a 4x. If it's blocked, discard cards until you find an attack, and they're going to want to block it because in Overhaul, this is just a 6 damage move, not a 4 damage move. I really like this Overhaul list. We are using Tongue Whip and Amphibious Ambush to just clog their card pool and overcome the lack of speed pump on Overhaul's face. Then we're using cards like Reconstruction to build on our Tongue Whips. We're using cards like Loving Father to draw to our hand. And 2 copies of Maximum Overhaul, where we can like use Sticky Balls, Maximum Overhaul, pick it up, build it for free, use it again. We can even pick up those Tongue Whips we're hiding, and you can see how very, very quickly our opponent's card pool is just, clogged with like 5 or 6 cards, and you can see the game plan here. Also, you can build in Apathetics with Maximum Overhaul, flip their best thing, pick it up, and then just put it down and flip their best thing again. Converting Captured Pieces, this is a card that we have seen not really played that much in Overhaul, surprisingly, but you get to discard a momentum and draw a card because you're almost always going to have more face-down foundations than your rival, and you can just commit for damage when you need, which would be nice on like Invincible Clasp as a throw. We are also running, Brute Strength to increase damage. Taking the Gloves Off just has some great deadlock. House of Cards as momentum hate. Yeah, I really, really like this list. If you watched my top 10 deck list I'm considering for Nationals, I was considering a very similar Evil Overhaul build, but I just knew that I hadn't spent enough time with Overhaul to really get the list finalized before Nationals. And William and I actually played each other in Swiss rounds, and I think other than our match, he went completely undefeated and went all the way to top 8. So we will see each other again in the World Championship. Okay, other Evil. We had 2 Mimic lists on Evil Make It. Of course, we had Phil Birch in top 4 of US Nationals. I have not played a lot of Evil Mimic, so I'm a little unfamiliar, but we are, of course, running Electromagnetic Stomp. We can lose 2 health, ready an asset. This is going to make Bench Press go off to where, because we've lost health, everything's getting +1 damage. We have other ways to lose health as well. although I can't remember them off the top of my head. Oh, Invincible Clasp, lose 2 health, this attack is +3 damage. We're of course running 4 copies of Tongue Whip, 2 copies of Vile Seizing. We got the Trigger, this is just incredible defense. Box Full of Babies is one of the primary reasons to run Mimic on Evil. It's just you get to commit this 1 diff asset for +1/+1, respond with Mimic for +2 damage. So committing it for +1/+3 seems really good. And you can always draw 1 card, discard 1 card, and just dig further for damage. Dig further for attacks. So this is a 60 card list, and we are running 26% assets and only 28% attacks. So we're really leaning on this checking an asset to go and find the attack we need. Because even though we're running a pretty healthy diversity of attacks, ultimately it's only 17 in a 60 card list. So we're very willing to just sit back and play defense. I really like this 1X Influencing the Youth. This is a card that I actually really liked when it was revealed, and then it just hasn't seen any major play in top cuts of tournaments. But you get to form, remove, name a foundation, commit all copies of the named card in both stages. And since that's a form, you can use that before you even start your attack string. Also, 3X Advice for Winners is very interesting. Make sure we check 5s. Let's jump to the other Evil Mimic list, which was in the Oceania region. This was Max Lawson. Now, this list was quite different from Phil's list in terms of the ratios. Phil's list was 60 cards, 17 attacks. This list is 58 cards and 17 foundations, but we're only running 19 foundations. So it's almost a 1/3, 1/3, 1/3 ratios going on here between foundations, attacks, and assets. The major difference between the list is Max's list is running 3 copies of Trigger Transformation instead of just 1. This is an attack that's always a 4 difficulty attack and Mimic pretty much, and you're getting +1 damage for every asset in your stage. Now Max's list is, he's got a lot of disruption here with like dissolving the conflict and in control and league invitation, quite a bit of stage control and disruption, and then we're just running a lot of 0 diffs, and that's because, a lot of these assets are going to be 2, 3, and 4 difficulty assets. And then we're actually running 5 actions on top of these, and 3 copies of Barrier Shield and 2 copies of Runaway. So a lot of disruption, 3 copies of Twisty Surroundings. Sorry, I just noticed that. That's very aggressive on Twisty Surroundings, but this card is so good right now in the meta that it makes sense. And 2 copies of League of Villains instead of just 1. Very disruption-focused list. So you can see the difference. Like, there might not be a right or wrong answer with the ratios. It's just different styles of the same deck. And that is going to do it for the Evil symbol. That takes us to... That is actually going to do it for me today. My voice is having trouble keeping up with me, so I'm going to do the Chaos, Earth, and Good symbols tomorrow. We had 11 different players make top cuts on Chaos and 13 each on Earth and Good. So by far and away, the most 3 successful symbols were Chaos, Earth, and Good. I'm not sure anybody is surprised by that, but that means that we have 37 deck lists to review tomorrow. So I will see you then.